What if I told you that the most disturbing thing people claim was found inside Meghan Markle's alleged California storage unit wasn't something you could photograph, bag as evidence, or roll out on a gurney? What if the word that stopped the internet cold, corpses, wasn't about bodies at all? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Take a breath before you answer that. Because the reason this story detonated across social media 5 minutes ago isn't because of what was supposedly opened. It's because of what people think was exposed. And those two things are very different. Right now, as you're watching this, thousands of posts are being refreshed. Screenshots are being reposted. Comment sections are filling faster than anyone can moderate them. The claim is dramatic. It's grotesque. It's irresistible. An anonymous voice says a storage unit linked to Meghan Markle was opened in California. Inside, corpses lying on the floor. No names. No photos. No police reports. No confirmation. And yet, millions believe it. Or at least, they want to. Why? That's the real story. And that's why this matters now. Because in the modern media ecosystem, facts don't spread fastest. Feelings do. Shock does. Language does. And the word corpses isn't just a word, it's a weapon. It conjures decay, neglect, hidden horror, something left too long in the dark, something you weren't meant to see. So before we even ask what's inside this alleged storage unit, we have to ask a far more uncomfortable question. Why are so many people eager to imagine something monstrous in the first place? Let's rewind. Storage units have always had a strange grip on the public imagination. They're liminal spaces, not homes, not trash. They sit in between, places where people put what they don't want to face yet. Old furniture, broken dreams, documents from lives that no longer exist. And in celebrity culture, storage units take on a mythic quality. Fans imagine them as vaults of secrets. Proof, evidence, the truth, finally boxed up and waiting to be discovered. So when a rumor like this appears, it doesn't land on neutral ground. It lands on fertile soil. And that soil has been cultivated for years. Meghan Markle is not just a person in the public eye. She is a symbol. To some, she represents independence and disruption. To others, manipulation and ambition. And symbols don't get treated like humans. They get treated like containers, vessels into which people pour their anger, admiration, resentment, and unresolved feelings about power, race, royalty, gender, and media itself. That's why a claim this extreme can spread without proof. It fits a story people already believe. But here's where things get interesting. The same posts that mention corpses never explain what kind. They don't say human. They don't say animal. They don't say literal. They just let the word sit there. Heavy, suggestive, horrifying. And when language is left deliberately vague, the imagination does the rest. Ask yourself this. If someone really believed they had discovered literal bodies, would the story unfold like this? Anonymous posts. No emergency response. No official involvement. No legal fallout. No names attached. No risk taken by the person supposedly revealing it. Or would it look very different? This is where the story begins to fracture. Because as shocking as the claim is, the structure of it doesn't resemble a real-world crime. It resembles something else entirely. It resembles a metaphor gone viral. In scandal culture, corpses doesn't always mean bodies. It means casualties, careers that never recovered, relationships that ended quietly, reputations that were damaged beyond repair. People who once stood close and are now never mentioned again. Think about how often we hear phrases like political career dead on arrival, or box office corpse, or media buried them. We talk about public figures as if they can die without dying, as if visibility itself is life, and silence is a kind of death. Now imagine taking that metaphor and placing it inside a storage unit. That's not accidental. That's storytelling. Because a storage unit filled with metaphorical corpses is far more plausible and far more disturbing than a literal crime scene. It suggests abandonment, concealment, things pushed aside when they became inconvenient. And that's why this rumor is sticking. It taps into a growing feeling that there are parts of this public saga we've never fully examined. That there are people who vanished from the narrative. That there are stories that were started loudly and then dropped without explanation. That there are contradictions no one ever resolved. And people are hungry for resolution. They want the door rolled up. They want the lights switched on. They want to see what's been sitting there all this time. But here's the contradiction that should make you pause. The louder the claim gets, the quieter the facts become. No mainstream outlet is confirming it. No authority is acknowledging it. No direct source is standing behind it. And yet the silence itself is being interpreted as proof. You've seen this pattern before. Silence becomes guilt. Non-response becomes confirmation. The absence of evidence becomes evidence of absence, or worse, evidence of a cover-up. And that's not accidental either. Silence is one of the most powerful accelerants in modern rumor culture, because it allows the audience to project whatever they already believe. And once that happens, the story no longer belongs to the person at the center of it. It belongs to the crowd. So ask yourself another question. If this story were completely false, would it matter? That sounds absurd at first. Of course, truth matters. But in the economy of outrage, belief often outweighs verification. A rumor doesn't need to be true to have consequences. It just needs to feel true to enough people at the same time. And those consequences are real. Reputations shift. Narratives harden. Public sentiment calcifies. And people who were once nuanced become flattened into caricatures. Heroes or villains. Victims or monsters. Alive or dead, metaphorically speaking. That's why this story matters now. Not because of what may or may not be inside a storage unit, but because it reveals where we are as an audience. Tired, suspicious, addicted to revelation, desperate for a final twist that explains everything. We've been trained to believe that there's always one last secret that will make the whole story make sense. One final door to open. One hidden room where the truth has been waiting patiently. But real life doesn't work that way. And yet, the rumor persists. Because even if there are no literal corpses, there may be something else lying on that floor. Something symbolic. Something uncomfortable. Something people aren't ready to confront. Dead narratives. Abandoned alliances. Broken trust. Careers that stalled. Voices that went quiet. Promises that evaporated once the cameras moved on. Those are harder to deny. Harder to investigate. Harder to clean up. And they don't require police tape to exist. They only require time. So here we are. 5 minutes ago, according to the internet, a door was opened. And whether or not that door was ever real, the reaction to it tells us something important. People believe there's rot somewhere. They believe something was left too long without explanation. They believe someone knows more than they've said. But believing doesn't make it true. And dismissing it outright doesn't make it harmless either. Because the most dangerous part of this story isn't the claim itself. It's what comes next. Who benefits from keeping this rumor alive? Who loses if it's debunked? And who, right now, is staying very quiet while the internet does the work for them? That's where we're going next. Because before we talk about what was allegedly inside that storage unit, we need to talk about how this story was born and why it exploded when it did. And once you see that, the entire narrative starts to shift. The storage unit that broke the internet. No photos, no receipts, no official documentation. And yet, somehow, everyone is talking about it. Within minutes of the claim surfacing, hashtags began trending, screenshots of anonymous posts flooded timelines, and comment sections ignited like wildfire. Meghan Markle's storage unit, they said. Corpses on the floor. The phrasing was grotesque, sensational, impossible to ignore. And in the chaos of instant virality, no one paused to ask a simple question. What is really happening here? That's the first thing you need to understand. This story didn't explode because of a verified fact. It exploded because of a rumor perfectly calibrated for the way we consume content today. It hit all the triggers: secrecy, scandal, celebrity, and the human fascination with the macabre. People are drawn to what they aren't supposed to see, to the places that are hidden, to the stories that feel like they could destroy everything. But let's rewind. The story didn't start 5 minutes ago. It didn't start when some anonymous post mentioned a California storage unit. This is the culmination of years of fascination, speculation, and obsession over the private life of a public figure. Meghan Markle has lived under an extraordinary microscope, one that magnifies every choice, every relationship, every conflict. And in that environment, even the tiniest rumor can metastasize into a cultural event. Think about that. A storage unit. A place so mundane, so ordinary, that millions of Americans pass them by every day without a second thought. And yet, When attached to a celebrity, it transforms instantly into a vault of secrets, a place where the unspoken, the hidden, the buried, whether metaphorical or literal, supposedly waits to be revealed. And that is precisely why this rumor spread so fast. The very idea of a storage unit creates a narrative tension. It promises discovery, revelation, exposure. And the word corpses, whether literal or figurative, amplifies that tension to near unbearable levels. So what do we know about this alleged unit? Not much. The claims surfaced on a series of anonymous forums, screenshots were shared across social media, and suddenly everyone was reporting it as fact. No investigative journalism, no confirmations, no police reports. Just the rumor, growing like a wildfire fueled by clicks, shares, and outrage. Now, here's the first clue that something about this story is unusual. In the real world, a claim of literal corpses being found in a storage unit would trigger law enforcement, media coverage, and legal proceedings. The complete absence of any of these suggests one of two possibilities. Either the rumor is entirely false, or the corpses aren't real. And the second option, metaphorical corpses, is where this story begins to get interesting. Because the term corpses doesn't have to refer to human bodies. In scandal culture, it often doesn't. It can mean destroyed reputations, careers that ended abruptly, alliances that disintegrated, opportunities that vanished. And when combined with the imagery of a storage unit, it evokes something deeply psychological. The feeling that there is a hidden truth, a secret waiting to be discovered, and that some people have gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal it. This is what makes the story both compelling and dangerous. Compelling because it taps into a universal curiosity. What are we not being told? What is hidden in the corners of the world that we assume is mundane? Dangerous because it exploits that curiosity without providing evidence, letting the audience fill in the blanks with their own fears, assumptions, and biases. Consider the psychology of virality. People share stories that shock them, that scare them, that make them feel like they're part of a discovery. And the more ambiguous the story, the more people will speculate, comment, and propagate it. The ambiguity of corpses on the floor is the perfect example. It allows each reader to project their own narrative onto the rumor. Some imagine literal horror. Others envision metaphorical destruction. Some see betrayal. Some see career failure. And the story becomes a mirror reflecting the audience's own expectations, fears, and obsessions. And that brings us to another critical factor: timing. This rumor didn't appear in a vacuum. It came at a moment when public fascination with Meghan Markle, her family, and her celebrity persona is unusually intense. Every media cycle amplifies prior narratives, and the collective attention of millions is a powerful force. In a world where social media accelerates gossip faster than journalism can verify it, a single post can ignite a conversation that spreads globally within hours. But here's the thing that makes this story different from other viral rumors. It isn't just about shock. It's about control. Whoever initiated the claim, whether deliberately or by accident, created a narrative that forces people to engage, to speculate, to assign blame, to take sides. And in doing so, the story gains momentum, independent of its veracity. The narrative feeds itself. Every share, every comment, every speculative video is fuel for the rumor's fire. Now, let's examine the role of the audience in this. You, the viewer, are not a passive consumer in this ecosystem. You are an active participant. The moment you see a story like this, you bring your assumptions, biases, and emotional responses. You interpret the words, fill in the gaps, and often pass it along without questioning the source. And that participation is exactly what keeps the story alive. Think about that for a second. In traditional journalism, the story exists in the reporting. In viral culture, the story exists in the reaction. The rumor about Meghan Markle's storage unit isn't just a story, it's a social experiment. It's a test of how quickly a narrative can spread when there's no evidence, only emotion. And the results are striking. Millions of people believe, discuss, and internalize a story that has no verified foundation. But there's another layer. This isn't merely a commentary on virality. It's a commentary on our collective appetite for secrets. Storage units have long been symbols of hidden truths, and in celebrity culture, that symbolism is magnified. The idea of a hidden room or a sealed box resonates because it taps into our fascination with what lies beneath the surface. It's the allure of forbidden knowledge, the thrill of discovery, and the tension between what is known and what is hidden. And when you combine that with a word as provocative as corpses, the effect is explosive. The language is deliberate. It evokes decay, neglect, horror, even if the actual content of the storage unit is mundane or metaphorical. The imagination does the heavy lifting. The mind fills in the blanks. And suddenly, a simple rumor transforms into a gripping narrative that captivates millions. So, what does this mean for the story itself? It means that the alleged storage unit is less important than the way it functions in the public imagination. It's a device, a symbol, a spark. The corpses on the floor are not necessarily literal, but they are real in the sense that they exist in the cultural consciousness. They represent consequences, secrets, and casualties, the human tendency to bury what we fear, hide what we regret, and forget what we cannot face. And that's why this story resonates. Because beneath the spectacle, beneath the horror, beneath the viral shock value, there's a truth about human behavior. We are drawn to mystery. We are captivated by concealment. We are compelled by the idea that there are truths being hidden from us, waiting to be discovered. And when someone tells us, "Look, here's a storage unit, here's what's inside," we respond instinctively. We lean in. We imagine. We speculate. But here's the ultimate irony. The more sensational the claim, the less likely it is to be verified. The more we believe, the less evidence is needed. The story becomes self-sustaining. The rumor takes on a life of its own. And in that ecosystem, the storage unit is less a physical location and more a metaphorical construct, a stage for our collective fears, obsessions, and judgments. And that is the story of the storage unit that broke the internet. Not because it contained literal corpses, but because it contained everything we project onto it: secrecy, scandal, betrayal, curiosity, and fear. It is a mirror reflecting the audience as much as the subject. It is a test of how stories spread, how narratives are constructed, and how belief shapes reality. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What do corpses really mean? The word hit like a hammer. Corpses. On the floor. In a storage unit. The phrasing was immediate, shocking, unforgettable. But here's the first question you need to ask yourself. Did it ever mean what you thought it meant? Because in the world of viral rumors, words rarely mean exactly what they say. They mean what they are allowed to make you feel. And in this case, corpses is a linguistic trap. It is a weapon designed to provoke instinctive horror, to make your imagination leap to the most grotesque scenario possible. Your mind conjures images of bodies, of crime scenes, of blood, of evidence. But that is not necessarily what the story is about. Let's unpack this. In contemporary celebrity culture, corpses often function as a metaphor. They describe anything that has been destroyed, abandoned, or left to rot. Careers that never recovered after a scandal. Relationships that ended quietly, without fanfare, without explanation. Promises that evaporated, opportunities that slipped through fingers. All of these things are corpses in the language of public narrative. Think about the phrase career corpse. You hear it often in journalism and gossip reporting. An actor appears in one controversial film, and suddenly their career is said to be dead. Yet the person is still alive. They still exist. They still work. The corpse is symbolic, not literal. The same goes for media corpse or reputation corpse. It's a way of describing loss and decay in a narrative sense, not a physical sense. Now consider what happens when you place that word inside a storage unit. The metaphor becomes almost cinematic. Storage units are already liminal spaces, neither fully private nor fully public. They hold what we don't want to deal with yet: old letters, unused furniture, abandoned projects. And if you imagine those spaces as containing corpses, the implication is powerful. These are things society, or the individual, has chosen to forget. They are consequences left in the dark. They are truths that have been buried. And here's the twist. The more vague the language, the more real it feels. When a source says corpses without specifying what kind, your imagination does the rest. You supply the horror, the narrative, the stakes. And that is exactly why the term is so effective in viral rumors. It creates a shared hallucination, a collective belief that something terrible has been uncovered, even if the claim itself is unverified, metaphorical, or outright false. This is not a new phenomenon. Language has always been used to manipulate perception. Words like dead, buried, destroyed operate on multiple levels. They describe physical reality in one sense, but emotional, social, and psychological reality in another. And in a world where social media amplifies every phrase, every post, every fragment of rumor, the ambiguity of language becomes a superpower. Ask yourself another question. How often do we hear phrases like, the brand is dead, or the project is buried, and immediately understand the meaning without thinking about literal death? Now apply that understanding to a celebrity scandal. Suddenly, the idea of corpses on the floor doesn't need to be literal to have the same emotional impact. It communicates ruin, abandonment, and consequences without showing a single body. And yet, people often react as though the word were literal. That is the genius, or the danger, of metaphorical language in rumor culture. It blurs the line between reality and imagination. It forces the audience to participate in the story. It relies on their willingness to fill in the blanks. And it thrives on ambiguity. So let's make this concrete. In the case of the alleged storage unit, what might these metaphorical corpses represent? Consider several possibilities. Careers that were derailed by controversy, missteps, or bad timing. In Hollywood, one miscalculation can have cascading consequences. Roles are lost, endorsements vanish, and opportunities evaporate. Those lost careers are the corpses of professional life. Abandoned alliances or partnerships. People who were once close collaborators, confidants, or supporters may have quietly disappeared from public view. Their silence can feel like death in a social sense. Media narratives that were buried or discarded. Stories that were once aggressively pursued may have been dropped or forgotten. Those narratives, though no longer active, leave behind a residue of influence, shaping perceptions, opinions, and assumptions. Personal relationships that ended abruptly. In the context of public scrutiny, friendships, professional partnerships, or familial ties may dissolve under pressure. The public may never witness these endings, but they exist nonetheless. These are social corpses. Remnants of connection that no longer function. The power of metaphor lies in its ability to suggest multiple layers simultaneously. In the alleged story, the corpses function as both literal and figurative devices. They evoke immediate horror, but they also suggest deeper truths about hidden consequences, abandoned commitments, and the collateral damage of public life. And here's the critical insight. The ambiguity is deliberate. By not specifying, the story encourages speculation, debate, and emotional engagement. Each reader or viewer projects their own fears, judgments, and assumptions onto the narrative. Some imagine literal horror. Others imagine social ruin. Some see betrayal. Some see ambition. And the story expands, morphs, and evolves as it spreads. This is why language matters so much in viral rumors. Words carry emotional weight, and certain words carry it disproportionately. Corpse, grave, buried, destroyed, forgotten. Each of these terms is a psychological trigger. They prompt the mind to fill in details, to imagine scenes, to create narratives. And once that mental image exists, it can be more compelling than any evidence. Now consider the broader implications. In the age of social media, a story doesn't need to be verified to have impact. The emotional resonance of a word can be sufficient. A rumor can shape perceptions, influence opinions, and even affect behavior. And in a culture obsessed with exposure, scandal, and hidden truths, the metaphorical power of language becomes a tool, intentionally or not, that drives attention, engagement, and belief. So when people read corpses on the floor in the context of Meghan Markle's alleged storage unit, they aren't just imagining horror. They are imagining consequences. They are imagining failures, endings, and abandonments. They are imagining the hidden damage that accumulates when careers, relationships, or reputations are left to decay out of public sight. And that, in turn, explains why the story spread so quickly. It doesn't rely on fact. It relies on feeling. It relies on fear, curiosity, and the need to make sense of chaos. It thrives because it gives the audience something to imagine, something to discuss, and something to share. But here's the kicker. The metaphor is so convincing that it can be mistaken for literal truth. And that's where the danger lies. When people act as if the corpses are real, the rumor gains credibility, regardless of evidence. The metaphor becomes reality in the public imagination, and the narrative takes on a life of its own. So what we learn from this is simple, but unsettling. In modern media, language is more powerful than facts. Words can create belief. Words can create fear. Words can create consequences that ripple far beyond the initial claim. And when those words are left deliberately ambiguous, as corpses in a storage unit is, they become almost impossible to dislodge from public consciousness. And that brings us to the next question. If these corpses aren't literal, who or what do they represent? Who has been left behind, abandoned, or silenced in the shadows of this story? And why does it feel so compelling to imagine them lying there, waiting to be discovered? Because what comes next isn't just a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of uncovering the hidden social, professional, and emotional casualties that no one talks about. The people and narratives that have quietly disappeared. And those are the corpses that really matter. But before we go there, we need to examine the first victims, not of crime, but of consequence. And that's where the story begins to take a darker, more human turn. Dead alliances. Who got left behind? Every rise leaves shadows. Every moment in the spotlight casts a darkness behind it. And in celebrity culture, those shadows often take the form of relationships that quietly crumble, careers that stall, and alliances that vanish without explanation. When we hear the phrase corpses on the floor in the context of Meghan Markle's alleged storage unit, it's not just a metaphor for destruction. It's a reflection of the people, the bonds, and the trust that have been abandoned, forgotten, or deliberately pushed aside. Let's begin with the concept of alliances. In Hollywood and global public life, relationships are currency. Friends, collaborators, advisors, and even rivals often form strategic partnerships. These relationships can elevate someone, shield them from criticism, or help navigate complex social ecosystems. And just as quickly, those alliances can collapse, sometimes quietly, sometimes explosively. But in the public eye, the end of a relationship rarely gets attention unless there's scandal, lawsuit, or betrayal involved. The rest are invisible casualties. Take, for instance, the network of professionals surrounding a high-profile figure like Meghan Markle. There are managers, publicists, agents, creative collaborators, security personnel, and advisors. Some of these individuals rise with the celebrity, benefiting from their proximity. Others are quietly pushed away when ambitions diverge, strategies shift, or conflicts emerge. And once those alliances end, they often vanish from public narrative entirely. They become, in essence, corpses, present once, essential once, but now forgotten and largely ignored. And it's not just professional alliances. Personal relationships are equally affected. Family members, friends, and acquaintances may drift apart for reasons the public will never understand. Some may be casualties of media scrutiny, others casualties of misaligned priorities. Over time, these disappearances create gaps in the narrative that are noticeable only to those who remember the connections. And in rumor culture, gaps like these are fertile ground. They invite speculation, assumption, and projection. Consider the psychological dimension. When people notice an absence, a friend who no longer speaks, a collaborator who no longer appears in interviews, a supporter who suddenly disappears, the human mind instinctively searches for cause. We fill in the blanks with stories that make sense to us, whether or not those stories are accurate. And when a rumor about a storage unit filled with corpses appears, it acts like a lens that magnifies these absences, giving them meaning, narrative, and emotional weight. In a sense, the metaphorical corpses are the overlooked casualties of success and visibility. Every high-profile career trajectory is littered with them. Think of actors whose early collaborations vanished after a single controversial film. Think of advisors whose guidance was ignored and whose reputations suffered quietly. Think of friends who were once part of the inner circle but are now never mentioned in the media, as if erased from history. These are not sensational details that dominate headlines, but they are real, tangible consequences of the pressures of fame and public scrutiny. And in the case of Meghan Markle, these invisible casualties carry a particularly potent weight. She has been a figure of intense public interest for years, scrutinized at every step. Every decision, every relationship, every perceived misstep is magnified, dissected, and debated. In such an environment, even minor disagreements or quiet departures can become magnified in significance. Those left behind, whether professionally or personally, often vanish into the shadows, their stories untold, their voices unheard. And yet, in the imagination of the public, their absence is filled with speculation. This is why the metaphor of the storage unit is so compelling. It represents a hidden space where all of these forgotten connections, abandoned projects, and silenced voices might be stored, waiting to be discovered. It is a visual and conceptual representation of consequences that exist but are rarely seen. And the idea of corpses lying on the floor transforms these absences into something tangible, something horrifying, something we can imagine confronting. But there's another layer to consider. The concept of dead alliances is not static. It evolves over time. Someone who is a visible ally today may become a forgotten casualty tomorrow. Conversely, someone who was ignored or dismissed may reemerge unexpectedly, reshaping the narrative and forcing a reevaluation of past alliances. In this sense, the metaphorical corpses are not permanent. They are subject to the ebb and flow of relationships, influence, and public perception. It's also worth noting that the disappearance of alliances can have cascading effects. When one key relationship dissolves, it can trigger a chain reaction. Collaborators who relied on that connection may drift away. Advisors who mediated conflicts may step back. Opportunities that once seemed assured may vanish. And the accumulation of these deaths, social, professional, and emotional, can create the sense of a floor littered with corpses, even if no one has been physically harmed. This is the subtlety that makes the metaphor so powerful. The storage unit becomes a repository not of literal bodies, but of consequences, a visual shorthand for the losses and absences that are part of the cost of public life. Each corpse represents a story untold, a connection severed, or a trust broken. And in the public imagination, these metaphorical corpses carry as much weight, if not more, than any physical evidence could. Now, let's apply this to the context of the current rumor. When people hear about corpses in Meghan Markle's storage unit, their minds instinctively reach for narratives of betrayal and abandonment. Who was left behind? Who disappeared quietly? Who was discarded in the pursuit of ambition or visibility? The rumor itself doesn't answer these questions, but it primes the audience to ask them. It invites speculation. It frames absence as evidence. And in doing so, it transforms invisible consequences into a shared, almost tangible story. And here's the most striking part. The metaphor works precisely because it is grounded in reality. For every celebrity or public figure, there are people who have been left behind, forgotten collaborators, estranged friends, unmentioned advisors. These are real social and emotional casualties, and they exist regardless of rumors. The storage unit narrative simply gives them a dramatic frame, a way to visualize the intangible costs of fame, scrutiny, and public life. It's a reminder that every story has hidden layers. Every public triumph has unseen casualties. Every rise to prominence leaves a shadow behind. And when the public imagination intersects with a provocative metaphor, those shadows take shape in ways that feel almost physical. They become the corpses on the floor, not literal, not criminal, but very real in their consequences. So as we move forward, remember this. The real fascination with the storage unit isn't about objects or even people. It's about relationships, trust, and the invisible consequences of ambition and public scrutiny. The alliances that were formed and broken, the bonds that were abandoned, the voices that went quiet. These are the corpses that matter. They are the social and emotional detritus of a world obsessed with visibility, power, and influence. And yet, even as we examine these casualties, one question remains. If these alliances were so fragile, who survives? Who remains standing while the rest lie metaphorically on the floor? And how does that survival reshape the narrative for everyone involved? Because what comes next isn't just about vanished relationships. It's about understanding the mythic quality of the spaces where secrets are said to live. Spaces like the storage unit itself, which, in our story, becomes a stage for hidden truths and untold consequences. The Hollywood storage unit myth. Every celebrity has one, or at least that's how the legend goes. A storage unit somewhere, tucked away in a nondescript industrial complex, holding secrets, evidence, or forgotten treasures. The very idea has become an almost archetypal image in pop culture. The hidden space where the public never sees, where the truth waits silently behind locked doors. And when the claim about Meghan Markle's California storage unit appeared, it instantly tapped into that mythology. But why are storage units so compelling in the collective imagination? It's not because of the physical space itself. After all, they're utilitarian, boring, and bland. Rows of metal doors, concrete floors, fluorescent lights. No mystery inherently exists there. The allure comes from the symbolism. A storage unit is a private space that is nonetheless accessible to outsiders, a liminal zone that blurs boundaries. It is the perfect metaphor for secrets. Contained, yet potentially exposed, ordinary yet concealing extraordinary things. Hollywood has long understood the narrative power of such spaces. Think of countless films and TV shows where storage units are revealed to contain shocking evidence, hidden fortunes, incriminating documents, forbidden treasures, even bodies. The trope is pervasive because it works. It triggers curiosity, heightens tension, and invites speculation. And when real-life rumors echo these fictional devices, the line between reality and myth blurs effortlessly. In celebrity culture, storage units serve an even more metaphorical function. They are perceived as repositories for what fame discards. Costumes from abandoned roles, letters from former collaborators, unreleased music, documents from deals gone bad, awards that no longer matter, and sometimes reputations themselves. The space is imagined as holding what the world no longer wants to acknowledge, a graveyard for professional and personal debris. When the idea of Meghan Markle's storage unit surfaced, it didn't just imply hidden objects. It implied hidden stories, hidden failures, and hidden casualties. The metaphor is remarkably elastic. Corpses on the floor can encompass abandoned opportunities, forgotten allies, or careers that never fully recovered from public scrutiny. And the setting of the storage unit gives these abstract concepts a tangible stage. Suddenly, the audience can picture them lying there, quiet, untouched, waiting for discovery. The myth of celebrity storage units also thrives on ambiguity. No one knows what is actually inside, and in that uncertainty lies its power. Ambiguity invites the audience to participate in the narrative. The lack of concrete details encourages imagination and speculation, and as we've seen, that speculation often becomes more compelling than any factual account could be. It's also worth noting that storage units evoke a sense of transgression. They are spaces the public is not supposed to enter, and the rumor of someone opening one suggests a violation, an exposure of the private into the public eye. That makes the story feel immediate, dangerous, and thrilling. People are drawn to it not just because of what might be inside, but because it feels forbidden, because it feels like a glimpse behind the curtain. Hollywood is full of examples where mundane spaces are transformed into legendary sites through rumor and story. Think of attics, basements, and warehouses that became notorious simply because of the mythos surrounding them. It's not the objects that matter as much as the narrative potential they represent. And in a culture obsessed with fame, gossip, and exposure, the myth often overshadows reality. The timing of this particular rumor amplifies the effect. The public has spent years scrutinizing Meghan Markle, parsing every action, statement, and association. Every interview, every media appearance, and every social media post has been dissected for meaning. That creates fertile ground for the storage unit narrative to take root. Because the audience is primed to believe that hidden stories exist, that secrets are waiting to be revealed, that private spaces hold explosive truths. And the imagery of corpses is a masterstroke. It takes what could be a banal story, a storage unit somewhere in California, and transforms it into something visceral, immediate, and emotionally charged. It triggers instinctive reactions of horror, curiosity, and moral judgment. People don't just wonder what's inside. They feel compelled to imagine the consequences, the history, and the reasons these items were hidden. But here's a subtlety worth exploring. While the narrative is compelling, it also highlights our collective fascination with control and access. We are obsessed with the idea that there are things being kept from us. The storage unit symbolizes this perfectly, a locked door that might hold evidence, revelations, or proof. It embodies the tension between knowledge and ignorance, the fear that we are missing something essential. And in this tension, rumor finds its power. Moreover, the storage unit functions as a kind of stage for our imagination. The audience fills in the details, drawing on prior knowledge, assumptions, and cultural narratives. The mental image of corpses lying on the floor becomes an amalgamation of all the lost stories, all the abandoned projects, all the forgotten alliances that we've come to associate with celebrity life. It's a psychological space as much as a physical one, a metaphorical theater where the hidden consequences of fame are imagined in full color. And yet, despite the allure of the myth, there's a gap between narrative and reality. Hollywood storage units are typically mundane, practical spaces. They store props, costumes, furniture, and paperwork, rarely anything dramatic. The myth is a storytelling device, a canvas for the imagination. And that's precisely why it works in viral rumors. It allows the audience to project drama, horror, and consequence onto a space that may, in reality, hold nothing of note. Because what comes next isn't just about vanished relationships. It's about understanding the mythic quality of the spaces where secrets are said to live. Spaces like the storage unit itself, which, in our story, becomes a stage for hidden truths and untold consequences. The Hollywood storage unit myth. Every celebrity has one, or at least that's how the legend goes. A storage unit somewhere, tucked away in a nondescript industrial complex, holding secrets, evidence, or forgotten treasures. The very idea has become an almost archetypal image in pop culture. The hidden space where the public never sees, where the truth waits silently behind locked doors. And when the claim about Meghan Markle's California storage unit appeared, it instantly tapped into that mythology. But why are storage units so compelling in the collective imagination? It's not because of the physical space itself. After all, they're utilitarian, boring, and bland. Rows of metal doors, concrete floors, fluorescent lights. No mystery inherently exists there. The allure comes from the symbolism. A storage unit is a private space that is nonetheless accessible to outsiders, a liminal zone that blurs boundaries. It is the perfect metaphor for secrets, contained, yet potentially exposed, ordinary yet concealing extraordinary things. Hollywood has long understood the narrative power of such spaces. Think of countless films and TV shows where storage units are revealed to contain shocking evidence, hidden fortunes, incriminating documents, forbidden treasures, even bodies. The trope is pervasive because it works. It triggers curiosity, heightens tension, and invites speculation. And when real-life rumors echo these fictional devices, the line between reality and myth blurs effortlessly. In celebrity culture, storage units serve an even more metaphorical function. They are perceived as repositories for what fame discards. Costumes from abandoned roles, letters from former collaborators, unreleased music, documents from deals gone bad, awards that no longer matter, and sometimes reputations themselves. The space is imagined as holding what the world no longer wants to acknowledge, a graveyard for professional and personal debris. When the idea of Meghan Markle's storage unit surfaced, it didn't just imply hidden objects. It implied hidden stories, hidden failures, and hidden casualties. The metaphor is remarkably elastic. Corpses on the floor can encompass abandoned opportunities, forgotten allies, or careers that never fully recovered from public scrutiny. And the setting of the storage unit gives these abstract concepts a tangible stage. Suddenly, the audience can picture them lying there, quiet, untouched, waiting for discovery. The myth of celebrity storage units also thrives on ambiguity. No one knows what is actually inside, and in that uncertainty lies its power. Ambiguity invites the audience to participate in the narrative. The lack of concrete details encourages imagination and speculation, and as we've seen, that speculation often becomes more compelling than any factual account could be. It's also worth noting that storage units evoke a sense of transgression. They are spaces the public is not supposed to enter, and the rumor of someone opening one suggests a violation, an exposure of the private into the public eye. That makes the story feel immediate, dangerous, and thrilling. People are drawn to it not just because of what might be inside, but because it feels forbidden, because it feels like a glimpse behind the curtain. Hollywood is full of examples where mundane spaces are transformed into legendary sites through rumor and story. Think of attics, basements, and warehouses that became notorious simply because of the mythos surrounding them. It's not the objects that matter as much as the narrative potential they represent. And in a culture obsessed with fame, gossip, and exposure, the myth often overshadows reality. The timing of this particular rumor amplifies the effect. The public has spent years scrutinizing Meghan Markle, parsing every action, statement, and association. Every interview, every media appearance, and every social media post has been dissected for meaning. That creates fertile ground for the storage unit narrative to take root. Because the audience is primed to believe that hidden stories exist, that secrets are waiting to be revealed, that private spaces hold explosive truths. And the imagery of corpses is a masterstroke. It takes what could be a banal story, a storage unit somewhere in California, and transforms it into something visceral, immediate, and emotionally charged. It triggers instinctive reactions of horror, curiosity, and moral judgment. People don't just wonder what's inside. They feel compelled to imagine the consequences, the history, and the reasons these items were hidden. But here's a subtlety worth exploring. While the narrative is compelling, it also highlights our collective fascination with control and access. We are obsessed with the idea that there are things being kept from us. The storage unit symbolizes this perfectly, a locked door that might hold evidence, revelations, or proof. It embodies the tension between knowledge and ignorance, the fear that we are missing something essential. And in this tension, rumor finds its power. Moreover, the storage unit functions as a kind of stage for our imagination. The audience fills in the details, drawing on prior knowledge, assumptions, and cultural narratives. The mental image of corpses lying on the floor becomes an amalgamation of all the lost stories, all the abandoned projects, all the forgotten alliances that we've come to associate with celebrity life. It's a psychological space as much as a physical one, a metaphorical theater where the hidden consequences of fame are imagined in full color. And yet, despite the allure of the myth, there's a gap between narrative and reality. Hollywood storage units are typically mundane, practical spaces. They store props, costumes, furniture, and paperwork, rarely anything dramatic. The myth is a storytelling device, a canvas for the imagination. And that's precisely why it works in viral rumors. It allows the audience to project drama, horror, and consequence onto a space that may, in reality, hold nothing of note. This is the delicate balance that gives the rumor its potency. It is grounded in the recognizable, a storage unit, a celebrity, a location, but elevated by suggestion and imagination. The truth of the story becomes secondary to the narrative potential, and the audience participates willingly, filling in gaps with speculation, emotion, and interpretation. And that brings us to the next layer of the story, the origin. Who started this rumor? Why now? Why this particular image? The answer lies not in the storage unit itself, but in the social, cultural, and psychological conditions that made the story irresistible. Because once we understand the origins, we begin to see the mechanics of the myth, how it spreads, why it resonates, and who benefits from its circulation. But what came next would challenge the narrative even further. Once the rumor caught fire, it didn't simply stay contained in social media forums. It began to ripple outward, influencing mainstream coverage, driving speculation, and forcing even those who were not inclined to follow celebrity gossip to take notice. The story was no longer just about a storage unit. It was about perception, influence, and the way hidden truths, real or imagined, shape our collective consciousness. Who started this, and why? Rumors rarely emerge from nowhere. Even the most seemingly spontaneous viral claims have an origin, a spark that ignites the fire. In the case of Meghan Markle's alleged California storage unit, the story didn't begin with a verified report or an official investigation. It began online, in the shadowy spaces of social media and anonymous forums, where the rules of evidence are fluid and emotional impact outweighs factual accuracy. The origin of this rumor is as elusive as the contents of the unit itself. Screenshots circulated showing posts on anonymous platforms. Accounts with no history of reporting factual information suddenly became authorities in the eyes of millions. The language was deliberately provocative. Corpses on the floor. The phrasing was not accidental. It was designed to shock, to provoke, to make people pause and share without hesitation. And that is the first clue to understanding the why behind the story. It was engineered for virality. Consider the incentives. In today's digital economy, engagement drives everything. Clicks, shares, comments, and views translate directly into attention, influence, and often revenue. Someone who posts a provocative claim about a celebrity can achieve instant visibility, whether they are seeking followers, selling ad space, or building a platform. The more outrageous the claim, the more engagement it generates. And corpses in a celebrity storage unit is about as outrageous as it gets without stepping into explicit defamation. But financial incentives aren't the only reason such rumors are created. There are social and cultural dynamics at play. Some individuals or groups use viral claims to influence perception, shape narratives, or even subtly manipulate public sentiment. In the polarized landscape surrounding Meghan Markle, where admiration and criticism exist in stark contrast, a rumor like this has the power to reinforce existing biases. It confirms what some already believe and challenges what others accept, sparking debate and amplifying visibility. Psychology also plays a crucial role. Humans are naturally drawn to stories of secrecy, betrayal, and hidden consequences. When a rumor promises access to concealed information, especially about a high-profile figure, our brains respond with heightened attention. We imagine scenarios, speculate about motives, and anticipate the fallout. The rumor becomes an interactive experience, a puzzle we feel compelled to solve. And the more ambiguous the details, as with corpses, the more engaged our imagination becomes. Timing is another factor that cannot be ignored. The rumor surfaced during a period of intense public interest in Meghan Markle's life, career, and media portrayal. Every public statement, interview, and social media post has been dissected and debated for years. That cumulative attention creates fertile ground for new claims. The audience is primed to believe that secrets exist, that there are hidden truths waiting to be exposed, and that someone, somewhere, knows more than we do. The rumor taps into this collective anticipation. The anonymity of the originators adds to the intrigue. When a claim comes from an unknown source, it carries both credibility and suspicion. On one hand, anonymity suggests a whistleblower or insider perspective. On the other hand, it allows the creator to avoid accountability while maximizing shock value. This ambiguity forces the audience to make a choice, to believe, to doubt, or to speculate endlessly. And the absence of verification fuels engagement. The rumor thrives in the gray zone between reality and imagination. But who truly benefits from this narrative? The answer is multi-layered. First, those who initiated the rumor gain attention and visibility. Second, the media ecosystem itself benefits from engagement. Outrage, speculation, and controversy drive traffic. Every mention, every share, every debate reinforces the story, regardless of its accuracy. Third, the audience is implicated. By consuming, sharing, and reacting, viewers become participants in the story's spread, giving it life beyond the initial post. The social dynamics are equally complex. Celebrity culture thrives on polarities: admiration and disdain, fascination and judgment. A story that positions Meghan Markle at the center of mystery, scandal, or danger activates these polarities. Supporters may rush to defend, critics to condemn, and the ambivalent to speculate. The rumor becomes a social experiment, measuring reactions, testing biases, and observing how narratives are internalized and propagated. There's also a strategic dimension to consider. In media and public relations, ambiguity can be more powerful than clarity. By leaving details vague, no confirmation, no explicit evidence, the rumor maximizes interpretive flexibility. Each person who encounters the story fills in the blanks according to their beliefs and desires. This is how a single post transforms into a global narrative. The story becomes co-authored by millions of participants, each projecting their assumptions, fears, and interpretations. Moreover, the rumor illustrates the psychology of confirmation bias. People are more likely to accept claims that fit existing narratives or expectations. If someone already believes that celebrity life is full of hidden scandals, that media narratives are manipulated, or that fame comes with invisible costs, the idea of corpses on the floor instantly resonates. It feels plausible because it aligns with pre-existing mental models. The story doesn't need evidence to be powerful. It only needs to feel consistent with what people already believe. And yet, despite the manipulation, there is a kernel of truth, not literal, but psychological. The rumor exposes a reality about perception, attention, and the mechanics of virality. It reveals how language, timing, ambiguity, and cultural fascination intersect to create narratives that feel real, even when they are not. The origin of the rumor is less about a storage unit and more about the social, emotional, and cognitive environment that allowed it to spread so explosively. This brings us back to the larger question: why now? Why did this particular narrative surface at this moment in time? Part of the answer lies in cultural timing. The public has been conditioned to anticipate revelation, exposure, and dramatic unmasking. Every scandal, every secret, every perceived betrayal in the past has set the stage for this type of story to gain traction. The rumor taps into a collective expectation that there is always something hidden, always something suppressed, always a door that, when opened, will reveal the truth. And the final piece of the puzzle is motive. Whoever created the rumor understands the mechanics of human attention. They know that a provocative phrase, delivered with ambiguity, will ignite discussion, speculation, and sharing. They understand that the public craves resolution but thrives on uncertainty. And by positioning the story within the familiar mythos of celebrity secrecy, the Hollywood storage unit, they maximize engagement without risking immediate factual scrutiny. So when you ask, who started this? The answer is complicated. It's not a single person, perhaps, but a network of actors. Anonymous posters, engaged audience members, and the media ecosystem itself, all participating in the creation and amplification of the narrative. The why is equally layered. Attention, influence, cultural fascination, and psychological impact all intersect to give the story life. But even as we trace the origin, another question emerges. What happens when the myth collides with reality? When the rumor has momentum, but evidence remains elusive, the narrative begins to take on a life of its own. It becomes less about facts and more about perception, belief, and influence. And that is the stage upon which the next chapter unfolds, the stage where silence becomes part of the story itself. Because what comes next isn't just about who started the rumor or why. It's about the consequences of that rumor, the way absence and silence amplify its power, and the emotional gravity that turns metaphorical corpses into something that feels tangible, inevitable, and haunting. Silence speaks, the power of what isn't said. One of the most striking aspects of the Meghan Markle storage unit rumor is not what was said, but what wasn't. In a world obsessed with immediate reaction, official statements, and visual proof, the absence of confirmation speaks volumes. The silence surrounding this story is almost deafening, and that silence has its own power. Think about it. A claim surfaces, a storage unit allegedly linked to Meghan Markle has been opened, revealing corpses on the floor. No law enforcement involvement, no photographs, no eyewitnesses, no official media verification. Yet millions of people instantly engage, share, and speculate. Why? Because silence creates a vacuum, and humans are wired to fill vacuums with meaning. Psychologists call this phenomenon ambiguity effect. Faced with incomplete information, people tend to assume the worst. The lack of evidence is interpreted not as an absence, but as concealment. If authorities or insiders are silent, the public imagines they must be hiding something. And that imagined cover-up amplifies the impact of the rumor far beyond the original post. In celebrity culture, silence is a double-edged sword. On one hand, Refusing to comment can protect individuals from giving undue attention to baseless claims. On the other hand, it leaves the narrative open to interpretation, speculation, and myth-making. In the case of Meghan Markle, every previous controversy, every media storm, every contested narrative primes the audience to read meaning into her silence. The absence of a statement is interpreted as evidence of secrecy, guilt, or confirmation. This is why rumors like this thrive in online environments. Social media accelerates speculation. Every comment, post, and share acts as a microamplifier, spreading the narrative while simultaneously filling in gaps with imagined details. Silence isn't neutral, it becomes a catalyst. The more ambiguous the claim, the more room the public has to construct their own versions of the story. And once those versions exist, they take on a life of their own, independent of reality. Silence also interacts with the power of expectation. The public has long expected revelations about celebrities to follow a predictable pattern. First, the rumor. Next, investigation. Finally, confirmation or exposure. When that pattern is disrupted, when there is no confirmation, the mind fills in the missing steps. If no one confirms, the audience assumes someone is deliberately keeping the secret. The rumor's plausibility is strengthened, paradoxically, by the lack of evidence. Consider how this plays into the metaphor of the storage unit. The unit is a hidden space, inaccessible to the public. Its contents are unknown. Silence mirrors that inaccessibility. We cannot see inside, we cannot verify, and so we project our fears, assumptions, and expectations onto it. The silence becomes part of the narrative, enhancing the tension, mystery, and emotional impact. Silence also creates social pressure. When a rumor circulates without official response, people feel compelled to react. Ignoring the story can feel like complacency or disbelief in the face of potential truth. Engaging, sharing, commenting, debating feels necessary. And in this way, silence indirectly drives participation, engagement, and amplification of the story. The emotional dimension of silence is significant as well. Humans are naturally attuned to unspoken signals. What isn't said often carries more weight than what is said. In social interactions, absence can communicate disapproval, avoidance, or hidden motives. In media narratives, silence can suggest shame, guilt, or complicity. And when combined with evocative imagery, a storage unit, corpses, secrecy, silence becomes almost unbearable. It demands interpretation. It demands engagement. It demands imagination.